Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blink Table Talk number 6. And I'm Sair, co-founder and CEO of Blinkco Technologies. Today, we have one of our international clients, an expert in cloud kitchens, and we have been working with Simele for last more than 4 months now. And we requested him to sit down with us and share some of his learnings while he's building a cloud kitchen brand and a cloud kitchen operations in South Africa. So, hi, Simel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Sair. Thank you for having me.
So, Simel, first things first, tell us about yourself. What's your background? How did you come into this? What have you been doing before starting this cloud kitchen?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've been entrepreneur in the entrepreneur space about for the last 12 years, doing various things, trying to find opportunities where there may be, and just finding, just a typical entrepreneur that I'm sure you know very well. I'm like, and I say this to everyone, and I'm sure the same to you. If somebody asked you 6, 7 years ago, would you be doing ghost kitchens? You'd have said no. And for me, it's even sooner than that. If somebody asked me that 2.5 years ago, I'd have said no. So it just shows that I'm a serial entrepreneur. I find opportunities where there may be, try and explore them the best I can. So that's what I've been doing my whole life. I've had various businesses, exited some, um, closed some down because business doesn't always work out. But it's just generally been entrepreneurship and chasing all types of opportunities whenever I can find them. And that's why I'm in this space now. It's just purely entrepreneurship driven and opportunity driven.
What made you interested in this particular space, and what was your thesis when you started this?
Yeah, so for us, we again found an opportunity to go into the restaurant business back home where I'm from. It's a smaller town than Johannesburg, where we're based now. And there was a restaurant that we had an opportunity to open. We thought it was a really good concept and a very good market for us to come into. And unfortunately, we opened that restaurant in November 2019. 4 months later, COVID hit, and we really struggled to sustain that business. But before we closed down that business, or before we opened rather in Newcastle, we were already looking for small kitchen space in Johannesburg to take advantage of the delivery boom that was happening around South Africa at the time. I think pre-COVID, we're doing over $1 billion a year just on online delivery, online food delivery in the country. So we thought that was a really good opportunity for us to grow into from a food side, where we could come in and offer something into the food delivery space that could make sense for the consumer. So we're already looking along those lines even before COVID. And we didn't know it was called ghost kitchens. We didn't know anything about cloud kitchens. We just knew that delivery makes sense and we need a small kitchen, because obviously we don't go through the whole capex part and all of that sort of stuff. So when COVID happened, we obviously had a bit of a slowdown. We couldn't really do too much at that time with all the lockdowns. But as we were sitting at home looking into this concept more, we learned more about ghost kitchens and we realized, oh, wow, there's a real opportunity here. And obviously, as any sort of business idea, it grows and manifests itself into something that eventually what it becomes. So for us, it was just purely coming into the restaurant industry because we saw an opportunity for the type of cuisine that we wanted to present to the consumer that we thought could work. And then COVID just kind of pivoted us towards deep dive into ghost kitchens.
And like, where does Jozi Cloud Kitchen stand right now? What is it? How, what operations, what are the scale of the operations? If you can give an introduction of that.
Yeah, so when we came to Johannesburg, we then decided, well, we're first thinking, I'm like, with any business, you start singular to try and solve your own personal problem. And you say, okay, I need a small kitchen. What can I do to make that happen? And as we looked into that, we saw it's very difficult to find something as small as what we needed, because we needed, like, say, 20, 25 square meters max. But getting that alone was very difficult. So we decided, let's look at other people who have the same issue. So then we collaborate with other people who have the same issue. We're also looking for small kitchen spaces to run virtual restaurants. And so we developed that idea from there where we said, you know what, let's look at a bigger space, get more than one kitchen, shared utilities, shared space, and shared rentals, and we'll be able to do our food concepts, and everyone else will be able to do the same. We found a space that we were going to be able to do about 6 kitchens. We handed in an offer to the landlord. The landlord was like, okay, cool, let's get the plans in and see what it looks like. We developed the plans, we handed over to him, and the guy just said, no, there's no way you guys can do this in my building. It's not going to happen. So we had to start all over again and find a different space. And so what ended up happening is that we found an even bigger space at an even better location and a better setup, and we decided to go with that. And so what that meant was we sort of like went right in and deep into that ghost kitchen space. We built out 10 kitchens, and we opened these in March 2021, and we have 10 kitchens in Bryanston. And at first, when we started operating, we're going to do a completely dark concept. So we're not going to have any sort of front of house, any takeaway, any sit down. But obviously, as we got into the space, as we learned more about the space, we realized there's an opportunity for a sit-down element. There's an opportunity to do pick up and takeaways. And so June last year, June 2021, we opened up a pickup area. So 3 months after opening, we opened up the pickup area so customers could actually come in and order from all our restaurants and pick up. And then in March this year, when we got into our relationship, we opened up the sit-down area, which has been a really, really great concept. What that allows is for people to come in and order from any and all of our restaurants. And because of your software, people are able to order from multiple different restaurants, which has been great. And yeah, so that's really been a really great place for us to be in. We're now looking to expand that concept all over the country, where we're sort of like creating this sort of virtual food court where people can come in and order from different restaurants, mix and match, and have a much better, going out experience because of, because what I'm like, one thing that we look at is people coming in and saying, it's so great to be here because I don't have to worry about, if I'm vegan, I can go to Jozi Cloud Kitchens, have a vegan restaurant, and my friend can have a steak or whatever, all in the same place. And that's what we've created.
I think, and even with the families, they have this, like, kids want to eat a certain kind of meal and the parents want to eat a certain kind of meal. So this becomes an important use case for multi-brand, even in the cases of deliveries. Uh, when we talk about cloud kitchens or ghost kitchens, we see two types of model. One is kitchen as a service, where you only operate and manage the kitchen with some shared services. And the other is where you build your own direct to consumer brands, where you own the brands. So which side are you on? Is it hybrid? You also have some of your own brands, or all the brands are your partners or tenants per se?
Yeah, so I'm like, we are kitchen as a service. It's the model we prefer. But the thing is, you also try and mix it up a bit and try and get that your own brands. So I'm like, we've got 10 kitchens, so we've got the ability to get into some of the brand ownership ourselves. And also what's nice about them is that we can always come in and come out. So if it doesn't work, we can always come out and rent out the kitchen. But primarily we are a kitchen as a service. And we rent out to guys who want to do their own virtual restaurants. For us, that's the best model that we've seen for our environment. But we are able to dabble in the own brands to the consumer if needs be from time to time.
If you talk about the South African market, or like, how many such cloud kitchens do you think can suffice their demand, in the sense, like, in Johannesburg, for example, 5 or 6 kitchens perhaps can deliver to the entire city, or maybe 15 or maybe 20. And if you take the top 5 cities where there is, like, food delivery has picked up or is fairly well established, of top 10 cities, could be top 15 cities. What do you think that number would be, like, where you can have if you're able to build that network, a single brand can be launched across the entire South Africa within a month's time, for example? What scale would that be?
Yeah, look, I think scale is an interesting one in South Africa because it's not, our market is a bit different. people do go out a lot here. It's slowed down a bit because of economy, because of the pandemic, but generally people do go out a lot. But I always say, the same customer who goes out a lot is still the same customer that will also want delivery only ghost kitchen. So I think for me, the product is the most important thing. Customers, the market is there. You just need to have a really good product. And we see it all the time. You see guys come into our kitchens who don't do well. And you see guys who come into our kitchens have been there since we opened and do very well. And it all just boils down to the service and the quality of the product. So it's never a question of whether the market is big enough or not. It's a matter of what your product does. Because I can promise you now, if a curry brand is doing well in our kitchens, there's no reason why a pasta brand can't do well. Simply because you're not going to eat the same thing every day. You want variety, you want different things. So I think South Africa allows itself to have a really good market. There's opportunity to scale. We obviously have the 3 major cities that we want to go into ourselves. So we now in Johannesburg, and we want to go to Durban and want to go to Cape Town. So those are the 3 major players that we think would be a great place to scale. And then within those cities, there's multiple areas to scale into. So we feel comfortable with, 10, 20 locations within those 3 cities. It's a very big country. It's widely spread. So it still allows you to go into different parts within the city and feel very comfortable about the market.
Nice. When we talk about cloud kitchens, and especially kitchen as a service, one of the challenges which you also briefly mentioned is that some brands don't do well. How did you solve that challenge, especially if you are working on a profit sharing model with them, if you're charging them a percentage, or so in that case, like how do you ensure that those are the brands that will be effective for you will be a good partnership in the longer run?
Yeah, look, I can tell you now, we haven't really cracked that ourselves. It's amazing how some brands can come in and just go lights out. We've got a brand that started with us right from the beginning. They had one brand out of the kitchen, and that brand has been doing pretty well. They've been able to stay all this whole time. And they came and opened a second brand, and that brand is doing as well as the first brand. And I have no idea how they do it. It's brilliant. But at the same time, we have guys who come in and you give them all the advice you can, you help them out as much as you can, and they just don't crack the market. So I think for me, what we've learned, and I think I've said this on my LinkedIn post as well, is people need to take ownership of their own brands. It's not our job as ghost kitchen providers we've seen, I've seen articles written about how, this cloud kitchen didn't do any marketing, this cloud kitchen didn't do this. I think we need to set boundaries as to what cloud kitchen providers like ourselves are meant to do and what your responsibility as the brand owner is. And I think those boundaries for me are, if I'm providing you with equipment or a kitchen, I need to maintain that and make sure that it's always a proper working order, the facility is clean in the general areas, and everything that you need to run your business is available to you. I think that's where my line is. You as a brand owner, your line is to do marketing, to have a quality product, to deliver the product properly to the customer. And then obviously the third party operator has their own responsibility. But I think what I've seen with feedback a lot with ghost kitchens and the challenges that have been put on us as ghost kitchen providers is things that I honestly don't feel we fall into. We don't fall into marketing brands as a primary source of providing for brands. Brands have to have a brand that works. And I think if we do and we provide our part properly and efficiently, we should be able to have those guys be successful. And we've seen that. We've seen that with the brands that have stuck with us for a long time. They've done well, they've had quality products, they've marketed themselves, and they've done well. And we as a ghost kitchen providers, we've made sure the equipment is always working, the facility is properly run, it's clean, it's certified. All the things that we need to do, we do. But I think a lot of it gets put on ghost kitchen providers that honestly shouldn't be put on us.
And do you guys work on a profit sharing model, or is it a fixed rental that you guys charge to your partners?
So we do a commission based on the sit down and takeaway that happens through our app. and then we do a straight rental on the kitchen itself. So we try and not take any profit share from your Uber Eats and Mr. D side. We just take commission based on the takeaway and the sit down element, and and delivery that we do, but we don't do a lot of delivery. We very much concentrated on sit down and takeaway.
Interesting. And how, what has been, like, if we talk about the larger cloud kitchen industry, what role do you think aggregators have in this industry? We have seen in Dubai and similar markets, in Saudi Arabia, where aggregators have opened their own cloud kitchens. Do you see that trend in South Africa, where aggregators have provided the same, like, kitchen as a service to different brands?
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that trend quite interestingly happening around some parts of the world. I don't see it happening here. I don't think the market is big enough, and I think third-party operators have enough other issues in South Africa than to delve into that. But at the same time, I do think they do get a really hard time around the world, especially with our American colleagues who really do bash a lot of the third-party operators. And I get it; they are expensive. The rates are high, but I think there's some good side to it. There's some upside to being on third-party delivery, and we see a lot of marketing upside for brands on third-party. Guys come to our sit-down area based on having seen brands on Uber Eats or Mr. D, and they come and trying their food. And I would imagine a lot of restaurants get that upside as well from being on Uber Eats or Mr. D. So I think there are some advantages, and I think we need to just in the long run find a way in which we can work together better with third-party delivery. But I don't see them going anywhere. So like you can now change millions and millions of consumers from using something that they're comfortable using. So it's just about embracing them and making sure that we find the best way to utilize them.
Yes, I think over time, like, there will be an equilibrium where the commissions will be rationalized, where the cost will be rationalized. So far, the equilibrium has not been able to it hasn't reached the equilibrium because of the subsidies and VC money that has all been going into the aggregators. But once they do those investments, and I think now is the time that is happening now, that most food delivery companies are trying to be profitable. They're trying to rationalize the costs, and they'll become more normal. And when that happened, what we saw was that more because the discounting ended on aggregators. When discounted ended or reduced on aggregators, more people also came towards direct ordering channels of the brands. Uh,
So,
so that we are sort of seeing that shift right now. Uh, what has been the impact of the recent food inflation, which I think has been a fairly global phenomenon? How are you seeing that affecting your restaurant partners' P&Ls, and is it really hurting them? Are they increasing their prices to overcome that, or?
yeah, so I'm like, you've seen a lot of price increases purely because of inflation and the cost of food currently. And unfortunately, that ends up going to the consumer. So that goes through to the consumer. They want to bear the brunt of it. Excuse me. And they can't always afford it. So it's a balancing act for brands. You can't just keep passing the cost to the consumer, because at some point the consumer is going to be like, I'm out, and they're going to put themselves out of the equation. So I think, there has to be a balance from the brand side, and that's what we try and relate to them. You can't just constantly be picking up your prices, because you remember, I'm like, if you look at what brands do from in our industry, they already pass on the 30%, or a big part of that 30% commission to the consumer. So if you're going to pass on inflation as well to the consumer, so you're now taking up your prices by 40 to 50%, at some point the consumer is going to pull out of that equation. And I think that's where people need to start being careful with price increases, because at some point I think we need to try eat those for a bit and let that equilibrium come in terms of inflation coming down and supply getting better. But generally, that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing a lot of price increases and a lot of that just being passed over to the consumer, which I think is kind of dangerous, but over time will hopefully play itself out. And I think also, with inflation, it's just a bit of patience. Yes, you might not be making money now, but you just play the long game, make a bit less now, retain the consumer, and make your buck better later on again. And I think we don't see a lot of that. I don't know on your side, but we don't see a lot of patience with guys on our side, especially the guys that leave. I'm like, guy comes in 2, 3 months later, is like, oh no, this is not working. And I said to them, what business do you know works within 3 months? There
Mm.
isn't. You need to have patience. You need to have a long game, and you need to understand what your goals are, have projections, see where you're missing them, see where you're hitting them, and see how you can improve. But everybody kind of comes into ghost kitchens, and I think that's a big misconception. And I think maybe as ghost kitchen operators, we need to take a bit of responsibility on that, where guys come in and they're like, oh, no capex, online deliveries $1 billion. It's going to be quick. It's going to be money. And everybody comes in with those sort of expectations. And as soon as they don't hit those expectations, oh no, it's not working. But it's like any other business. You need to put money in, you need to put work in, and it's going to take time, and we don't have a
Absolutely.
lot of patience.
Yeah. I think in general, if we talk about the restaurant industry or F&B in general, there is a very big long tail of mom and pop individuals, small businessmen trying to open restaurants. So that is where the impatient capital comes in because their capacity is not to sustain. And then on the top, you have those large private equity groups, certain like international franchises and chains where they have the muscle to be more
Yeah.
patient with it. Uh, so let's talk about the technology landscape. Like when since cloud kitchens and multi-brand cloud kitchens is a relatively new thing, we saw that I would say pre-COVID it was there, but COVID really sort of it sped up things
Anyway,
for them,
yeah.
elevated, yes. Uh, what technologies are you using? A point of sale, and obviously you're our client, so we know for the ordering side you're using Blink. But for what about the back of the house and point of sale? How's been your experience with different technologies and how's that going?
Look, I think in South Africa specifically, there hasn't really been a really big move towards POS for cloud kitchens. Like the POSs that we've seen and we've experienced are very much still geared towards the old style restaurants, which means that you've had to kind of, try and create a menu package as a restaurant, another menu, you know, because nobody's really done anything specifically for cloud kitchens in South Africa for in terms of POS. And also, we don't impose any POS on any of our clients. We kind of just say, you know what, here are some options, look around, and not all of them use POS. So, for example, if you've got one brand, most guys are happy to just use the back end of your Uber Eats and that sort of stuff for their reporting. So a lot of guys don't use POSs and we don't impose any sort of POS. But what I've looked at, I'm like, we don't have, for example, a toast here in South Africa where you have sort of like POS that's geared for cloud kitchens. So I think that's a market that's there. And obviously, we've had to look internationally for all our software. We haven't really looked locally or tried locally or have been able to find anything locally. So yeah, so nothing really that speaks to POS and cloud kitchens merging together on a software front for us.
And which problems were solved by Blink for you? How did that help Jozi in its journey?
I think for us, what we found was that an app was very important. I think people are still very app conscious in South Africa. It allows us to sort of like capture a consumer better. So I think, and obviously tracking is much easier and better on an app. You know how many people have downloaded it, how many people are using it, and it's more convenient for the clients as well to be able to say, I've got the app, I've got my account. So the app, I think, was a big player for us to be able to have that for both Android and iOS. So I think that's been a big game changer for us. And obviously, we've been able to use Blink for is we've got tablets in front because we've got a web-based ordering system as well. We've been able to use Blink on our tablets for customers to come in and order on sort of like a kiosk type of setup. So we've been able to adapt slightly the software to be able to use it as a kiosk. So I think it's been able to help us very, very much be able to satisfy the sit-down element and the takeaway element for our customers in a much easier way than what we're doing before.
And what are so one thing you mentioned, like POS is also one of the things that is sort of underserved in South Africa. And I think generally whoever we speak with, in at least in the emerging markets, it isn't underserved because it's not big enough as yet where its demand can be met. What are this like which other sort of technology solutions are you looking for where you believe that technology can play a role specifically for cloud kitchens? It could be as different as like HR related or finance related or front end like loyalty or consumer engagement related. Anything where you see certain gaps which can be felt by technology providers.
Yeah, I think it goes a bit to the POS part again, because I'm like, for example, if you imagine what we do, we collect all payments for our kitchens. So the customer pays to us and then we do payouts to our clients. And I think, we've been looking for software that could make that process much easier, almost automated, where once money comes in, it's able to configure the reporting and able to do payouts in a much easier and simpler way than what, we're doing it very manually currently, pulling reports from Blink and then moving that over to payouts. So, that sort of software being able to do that, I think for me would be one of the major things. And I think probably a lot of, I'm like, I've got colleagues that I speak to internationally who have the same issue, where they want to be able to get something where they can pull and pay out without having to worry about the configurations and making sure everything is correct, just being able to almost automate that whole system. And I think if you can imagine with us growing, that all of a sudden you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 kitchens and you need to do 50 different payouts. Doing that manually is
especially when within one order you could have potentially food from 5 different brands, then you have to basically go through each order. uh, Interesting.
Well, yeah. So I'm like, obviously, what with Blink, it's slightly easier because obviously it's in Excel, so we're able to filter and that sort of stuff. So that makes it easier. But obviously, automating that in the long run would be key.
Sounds good. We'll definitely work on this and see how we can solve this problem. uh, what would you advise people willing to launch their own brand? You have seen 10, 12 people at least, or maybe more within the Josi's journey. Where do most of them go wrong?
I think it goes back to what we're talking about, the impatient capital. And I get it. People do have limited funding.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the question becomes, or the question starts, do you want to start a business? And if the answer is yes, then you need to do all the parts of starting a business. And that means starting, making a loss, learning, improving, then getting to profitability. Yeah. But everybody seems to want to go from starting to profitability and skipping everything else that comes with it. And then when they don't jump from 1 to step 5, it's almost as if it's our fault, as if we didn't give them. I'm like, what more can I do? I gave you a functioning grill and a functioning refrigeration, and what more should I do as a ghost kitchen provider? So I think what we need is people to understand that they're coming to start a business, and what we provide is not an easier business. We just provide a less risky business from the point of view of saying, you're not going to have to put up capex to build out a whole restaurant. You're not going to have to sign a 5-year lease. You're not going to have to have feed come into your store by yourself. We put steps in place to mitigate all those risks that you have to take anyway if you're going to start a business. And people don't seem to grasp that. And I think for us, that's what that's what I would advise to people. Understand what it means to start a restaurant and started knowing what all of it entails. And you could do very, very well. We've seen guys do very well. I'm like, we've got guys who are leaving our kitchen end of this week to open a brick and mortar, and they've been with us for over 6 months, and they've now raised enough capital within our kitchens to be able to open a whole restaurant, because that's what they want to do. But they've started in a ghost kitchen, which I think a ghost kitchen is there to do. We've got a guy who's started with us in March last year, who's going to be opening up his fourth store, his fourth brick and mortar, and his start was at Jozi Cloud Kitchens. We've got guys who are opening multiple stores or multiple ghost kitchens, not with us, but with other providers. And they started with us. So there's growth, there's opportunity, but you've got to be on top of your game just as much as we have to be on top of our game to provide you with the facility. You have to be on top of yours to make it a success.
Thank you so much, Simele, for your time. It's really lovely talking to you and learning from your experiences. Thank you so much for giving us time.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.